All right, slash pull 10. Slash pull 10. Anybody get that pull timer? Why is the pull timer not working?
Oh,
Well,
grab
hold on,
the
I'm
bus.
eating. Go on, don't pull.
Don't pull. Okay, Growl's eating. Growl's eating. So the reason my pull timer's not working. Can somebody else hit the pull timer?
No, I DC'd.
Okay.
My bad.
Well, apparently nobody else is going to be able to hit the pull timer either for this special episode of the Bench powered by Wowhead. As Blizzard has killed add-ons. Add-ons are dead, and dooming has commenced. And there's a lot of changes that have been leaked. So basically, or I say leaked, but announced, I would say. Blizzard has announced a bunch of information in regards to what's going on with Midnight. They unveiled the alpha. The alpha is playable for select people. They have a couple of dungeons available. They also have a raid boss, which is pretty unprecedented for them. There's also player housing, a lot of class design. But the stuff that we are going to be talking about a ton today is combat decisions that they're changing, add-ons, and there has been a large amount of, I would say, pruning in regards to class design, which has a lot of people dooming and very upset. Do we want to start with add-ons, I guess, is kind of the question.
I think add-ons is a good place to start.
Okay. So, Squishy, for the viewers at home, what exactly did they say about add-ons? How is this going to affect people?
We had a group interview with the NA content creators. Did either of you go to it?
I did, yes.
They talked the entire time as if everybody knew that add-ons were going to be disabled already, and never explicitly said that. So this is the assumption that they are going to be removed during pre-patch of Midnight. A lot earlier than I think a lot of us would have thought. They'd never explicitly said it, but all the context in their answers here were like, yeah, they're absolutely gone, and all of us just have to assume that's what they meant.
So the reading between the lines that I got from that interview was them saying anything combat related add-on wise was going to be removed. They did say that they were going to be sending out add-on developers like a handbook over the next couple of days, talking about what is and isn't going to be allowed in regards to add-ons. But generally speaking, at least again from this interview that I was sitting in on, they were basically saying that most of the add-on functionality was going to be removed, particularly related towards combat add-ons. Since then, some people, I think that I've seen like a video from the Deadly Boss Mods creator. He created a video talking about the stuff that is being restricted, and it seems like it's a bit more vast than the kind of vibes that I got from this interview. So the vibes that I got from this interview was them basically saying that most add-ons are going to be allowed to like reskin things such as the cooldown manager. Weak auras are going to be still allowed in regards for like buff and debuff tracking for like specific spec-based abilities, but anything combat related against bosses or whatever, it's going to be kind of restricted in, and they described it as like a black box where you can tell that something is there, but you can't tell what's inside it. You can reskin this black box, but you're not going to be able to tell exactly what's going on.
Yeah. So I think for like turning this into what actually happened. So the weak aura people got the doc from Blizzard, and I think the summary of it is buff and debuff tracking is limited to what Blizzard provides us, which is the cooldown manager, private aura anchors, or if that still exists, and the Blizzard boss mods, Blizzard details, and their new external tracker. Like they mentioned an external tracker in this interview, which was really interesting because we hadn't heard of that yet.
Yeah. So basically you're going to be able to reskin everything that's base Blizzard now, right? Which
theoretically,
okay, in theory you are. I guess now there is a question as to what is the legitimacy of this, but in theory, you're going to be able to reskin their boss timers, reskin their cooldown manager, and the damage meters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's also I saw, according to the Deadly Boss Mods video, they've removed message tracking or whisper tracking in instanced content, which means in and outside of combat as well for whisper tracking, which would have broke private auras, which is the way that people had used, kick. I remember kick trackers were using like whispers, like you're kicking next, and you pop this thing up on your screen, right? That's how it used to work back in the old days. That's all gone now too. So very interesting kind of decision point.
I think fully automatic assignments should be dead at this point. Like any way for add-ons to communicate and automate things inside the game is going to be dead. Press and macro things totally gone. Tracking cooldowns outside of the external tracker probably dead. So yeah, I think based on what this is, they've done it.
So weak auras, Cell, LVUI, all of those add-ons should still be alive in the sense that they
We
can
don't know.
they can reskin the base game.
I mean, they're dead.
correct?
They're dead. Let's be honest. They dropped the bomb. Like, I think that the idea that when they say, "Oh, this add-on is here, this add-on is here," like none of these add-ons that people are using right now will exist in any form that anywhere resembles what it is currently.
I've seen
Like, if
people,
you like the idea to retexture your health bars or change from horizontal to vertical, like those sorts of things, but like the idea that, oh, I'll be able to, filter out these buffs, or I'll be able to see this, or this will glow, none of this is going to happen. You will not be able to have any logic whatsoever on any of these things other than what's provided by Blizzard.
yeah. So Plater might
Yeah.
still exist, but Plater scripts are gonna pretty much universally be dead. Yeah.
But I mean, you don't use like every feature that Plater has that you will still be able to use. Every other nameplate add-on has, right? Like the ability to reskin your bars. The reason people use Plater and that everyone says Plater is because of the customization, because of the scripts, right? And this just won't so I think that's why I say it's disingenuous to say, oh, Plater will exist and Cell will exist, because realistically it's going to be one add-on per thing, and all it'll be is like, all right, change the textures, change the color, that'll all it will not be any semblance of what add-ons are now.
I do think HUD tracking is like a pretty huge deal from a weak auras perspective. Compare that to what you currently have with the cooldown manager. I think that weak auras is still going to be superior in terms of being able to
Well,
your
again,
information.
right? Like a big part of the HUD is, okay, your Ellie Shaman Aura bar shows how much resources you're going to gain as you're casting an ability, so you know what you'll have. And it has a reminder that glows when this ability is going to drop. And when this comes off cooldown, it flashes. All of these things that people think of when they're like, oh, this weak Aura HUD bar is so much better, I could never use the cooldown tracker, is going to be gone. It'll simply be, okay, well, I can use a weak aura thing to like reorder my spells, and like, okay, here's my big spells are up top and my utility are on the bottom. Like that's basic. It'll basically just be you're moving spell bars around, or like, oh, I want to use different types of icons, because what else would it be?
I guess question, are you actually not going to be able to apply glows to your own personal stuff?
We don't know.
Okay.
We have absolutely
well, the problem is it won't be conditional, right? So when you say glow, what does that mean? Like,
true.
If you want the icon to glow all the time, yeah, you can do that, right? But there's no like, oh, hey, this ability came off cooldown, or you got this proc, now it glows. No, none of that. Unless it has to be in the game, and then at that point, right, it's the exact same as the cooldown tracker.
Exactly, and like they haven't said what exactly is going to happen with the like unit frames or raid frames yet. Those are kind of up in the air right now. But as Growl said, the conditional stuff is almost certainly gone. You're not going to turn threat, the threat plates a certain color when you're losing or gaining threat. You can't have it when, if there's missing dots, like stuff like that. I don't think that's going to exist anymore.
The threat plates are in the base game now.
Yeah, so the idea that I'm hearing this come around a lot of like, oh, this will never happen. You'll never have a kick tracker. You can never color code mobs. That is not what they said. Anything that happens in the in-game UI, you will be able to do. And part of the idea of this is so that Blizzard can improve the in-game UI and you have these tools available to you, right? And I think everyone's suspicion is reasonable that chances are there's going to be a pain period where a lot of the stuff that gets put in the game is dog shit and it slowly gets improved over time. But now they have to, right? It's not a matter of you can leave the base in-game nameplates terrible for 4 years. Like that just won't be a thing. They will, and they've shown that they're willing to fix stuff and be a lot more attentive than the Blizzard of 10 years ago in terms of changing stuff. So I agree, like there will be a pain period, but this was a Band-Aid that had to be ripped off. And when it comes to chat is another big one where add-ons interact with each other and chat a lot more than a lot of people realize.
Like that's how people got around private auras, right?
Right. And the problem is that allows you to work around everything, right? Because like, let's say, okay, well, I press my kick, and then now I have an add-on that sends a message to the chat that says kick, and then my teammate sees that message, and now he knows that I kicked. Okay, well, now you have a kick tracker, right? Regardless of what they just do, if add-ons can communicate in the chat and do that, then you can rebuild almost everything based off of the chat. So a big part of this is disabling that add-on communication so that only what Blizzard wants you to see, you can see.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that nameplates had it, but yeah, I think like from what I've seen of the beta UI, it's actually a lot better. And they talked about like, they're adding text to speech for things on their cooldown tracker. They're adding sound. Like Tettles is shaking his head already. He doesn't want the text.
TTS. TTS is so bad.
I mean, I don't know what exactly it's enabled on. Like beta just went up, but like, have you guys experimented with the in-game boss mods?
I have, yeah. I have not. I did the boss. It kept so the servers were a little bit unstable today. I pulled the boss probably 5 or 6 times. The boss, I enabled the boss timeline, and it had timers and stuff on it. It was honestly not that bad. It was kind of similar-ish to Big Wigs.
So, Grau, do you use bars or timeline?
Bars.
I always use bars, but this only has timeline, right?
There's no bars.
Yeah.
That's what all of us just realized. I was watching Max earlier. He goes like, this is a good timeline, but how do I get bars? And he spent like 5 minutes trying to figure out how to get bars, and then it's like, there are none. And I think Blizzard may have missed the mark on this one a little. Like, there are people who love timelines, and they made a really, really good timeline tool that is very customizable. You can make it vertical, horizontal, transparency. You can add the text name to the side. Like, great timeline tool. But the reality is the majority of people don't use timelines. They use bars.
I use bars, and it was a great timeline. That's why I was like, I was surprised it wasn't that bad, but I don't use the timeline.
Like, again, this is something that, in my opinion, unless you guys think otherwise, I think this is the biggest change that WoW has ever had, ever. Like, in terms of the way people play the game and the way the game works, and like, I can't think of like anything that even comes close. Like the Dragonflight talent trees was like pretty crazy. It's nowhere near this. Like, removal of affixes was crazy for M+. I mean, like, the gearing, I mean, nothing is changing the game anywhere like this.
Was the WAD prune bigger than this, Squishy? I mean, I didn't start playing until after that.
WAD prune?
Yeah, whenever they started pruning all the abilities going into Warlords.
Oh, I think this is just like, this is a pretty big one. And it was funny because I was looking at some other subreddits. Like, our article on combat addicts being disabled made its way to r/games, r/PC gaming. Like, it got places. Like, this is for people that, like, WoW is such a big game that there are people who played WoW and don't really, like, play WoW anymore. But the majority of people who quit WoW kind of see this as a good thing.
Oh, it's massive. Like, it's massive. I mean, I
think it's a good thing.
It is just huge. It's just so big. Like, it's literally, I think my new bit is going to be, this is WoW 2. Like, there is nothing that could be WoW 2 more than this. I mean, we're going to get into the other big topic of class changes way later in the show, but the fact that what they're doing with classes and what they're doing with the UI is the biggest, like, nobody expected this. When everybody logged into the beta, unanimously, everyone was like, wow, there's a lot of changes, both, right? With the UI, I don't think anybody expected when they were like, yep, we're nuking all add-ons starting immediately. And with the class changes and all the class reworks, like, this is literally WoW 2. Dude. And I'm so unbelievably excited by it. Like, this is WoW 2 is what they're doing. It's crazy.
I feel like an absolute idiot. I mean, we looked at the timeline like 2 weeks ago, and we were like, there's really not that much in phase 1. That's surprising. It only says class design changes.
There's going to be a new zone. We're going to level up on the alpha.
It's just a class design. It's like a footnote. No, what the fuck? It's the entire game. It's like, it is a lot
The
different.
footnote should just say WoW 2. And I mean, it literally is what it is. Okay, it's absolutely crazy.
So something that they did say in the interview that I actually thought was pretty interesting, I'm interested in Swishy's thoughts on this, is that they mentioned that on a lot of alphas normally gets used as like a PR thing where it's there to kind of like hype up the content and like show the new content and be there as more of like a promotional tool. And this time they said they're actually getting a lot more people into this alpha, particularly add-on developers, and trying to get a lot more feedback in regards to what's going on with add-ons. What did you think whenever they said that? Because that to me,
except for Bellular.
well, he's not into add-ons. He's into hate posting.
No,
I think is what he's into.
I want to see that. Like, they've talked a lot of big game and they've said a lot of good things that they haven't executed on yet. Like, for instance, you say this, but Mystical OS, who is the DBM guy, I think,
yes,
right?
Yes.
He's not even in the alpha yet. So if the guy in charge of DBM, which is like the add-on, right, since like the beginning of WoW, is not it, like, okay, you're talking a big game, but I want to see it. Like they've said a lot of things. We're not going to go over everything on this pod, but a lot of it is talk so far. I mean, with the add-ons and with the class design stuff is crazy, but obviously everyone needs to see some follow through. And I think when you hear some people dooming and some people excited, I think that comes down to everyone's sort of like trust or faith in Blizzard to execute what they're saying.
Yeah.
The people who are dooming right now are basically don't have a lot of faith in their class design. They don't have a lot of faith in the UI, and they're thinking that Blizzard is going to ruin this. And then you have Blizzard shills like me and Tuttles who are just like, oh yeah, this is great. This is so good.
Well, I think it's a thing that they have to do synchronously with encounter design. And I think encounter design is going to be the key piece here that I think is going to be like make or break with this, where, it's, I think, reasonable to not really want to have a bunch of weak auras, a bunch of boss mods, a TTS lady in your ear telling you all the mechanics, need a kick tracker, do all these things that allow you to be able to play the game effectively. It's great to not want them. But then if they design Priory of the Sacred Flame and put it in Midnight, like, and then you don't have a kick tracker and you don't see CC, like, okay, you've just made an impossible challenge for me. Like you have now just made it twice as hard. And so I think that there's gonna, like you're saying, there's gonna have to be insane follow through. And I think that the affordance that they talked about in some of their interviews, where they're talking about how much time you're given to be able to do a raid mechanic, that's kind of like a key thing, right? Where I think of maybe like Brew Twister Ovanax is like a really good example of this. If you just give players six more seconds to like stack up and break the egg, you don't need a weak aura for it. But there's so many mechanics that they design that require weak auras that you're just like, how is I ever supposed to do this mechanic?
The whole thing is like all of these things that are going on have built up over time in WoW, and they create a very difficult situation for Blizzard.
Yeah.
So like, for example, the Brew Twister weak aura eggs thing, right? Basically, there's 8 eggs. Each breaker does 2. It assigns 4 random people. You have to go to those eggs and break them. The problem is, if you have a weak aura, you could literally just be like, okay, you go to square. And then that's not even a mechanic that you have to think other than go to the square and move your guy there, right? And that's essentially what people do now in game. People literally just script out as much as possible, and they let all the add-ons tell you what to do, and they just put the markers down. So what does Blizzard have to do if they want to make a hard fight? Well, then they have to give you such little time that you have to be all right, where's square? Okay, where's X? Okay, I'm going to be in between them. Okay, get ready. And then it says go square, and then you run over to square. Like, that's the whole game, right? You're not even thinking about breaking eggs or where your team is. You're just like anticipating the weak aura to tell you what to do and then doing it as fast as possible. And that's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not good gameplay. And like, I want the mechanic to be, okay, we have 4 people, right? Oh man, Bob has the eggs, and this guy's a greedy motherfucker, and he's gonna be on the boss the whole time. So I better go on the ones that are away from the boss. Oh no, Timmy is right here. We walked to the same one. Let me wait to see what he does. Okay, he switched. I'm gonna go. You know what I mean? Like, to me, this is what a mechanic should be in a raiding guild, or like when you're working with people. It shouldn't be move to square, and then stop, and then was there's 2 people on square there? Okay, let me check the logs. I said square. Look at the state chat. I said square too. Oh, your weak auras is 2 versions out of date. You didn't update before the raid. Okay, everybody update. Break 5. I mean, this is what Mythic raiding is.
PTSD.
And I understand that people who don't Mythic raid are sitting here like, wow, this cat should just quit raiding or whatever. But it's like, this is the game that we're playing now. I don't want to play this game. This isn't fun. I want to play raiding like raiding is in every other game. And it's not this.
I'm actually so excited for it. One of the things that they mentioned, by the way, I don't know if we actually published this quote, but basically there's going to be an import export feature for the edit mode, meaning if your favorite streamer has a UI pack of the cooldown manager with sound alerts that they want to set up, and then it's locked behind a subwall, they can still do that.
That's great. Sure, that's fantastic.
No, but yeah, they were talking about like sound alerts and like setting it up for every class and stuff like that. But yeah, you can import export. So Teddles can set up my Boomkin UI for me.
Dude, cooldown manager needs dot tracking on it. I was
They
not
they
happy about
talked
that.
about that.
I know. I was shocked that it didn't have it. Where like I think that pretty much something that's consistent with every spec in the game that they have like dots on it is their UI has like desaturated dots on their HUD whenever you don't have a dot on that target. And then it also
yes, but already do you see this like dangerous territory that you're getting in of like I remember mine too of like so I had a dot tracker with Druid and it would track all of my dots and it would desaturate and change color when I need the dot and it would glow when I'm supposed to reapply it and like it's doing all this stuff.
Except pandemicking is dog shit, and the fact that you can only track dots on nameplates is also fucking annoying.
Yeah, and Dorky was developing this plater script where okay, you go into a pack and all the mobs that need to be dotted are showing, and then as you dot the nameplates, if they're unimportant mobs that don't have kicks or prio, they disappear. And so like he's literally just mousing over nameplates and they're just disappearing as he's dotting them, and then it leaves only the caster that he needs to kick and then the prio mob, and it's just like I understand what people are saying, like, oh, this doesn't do what my HUD needs to do, but like at some point they're gonna need to draw the line, and it can't just have all of these features that were in the game, you know?
Yeah,
like when you say a dot tracker, like I don't know, like I think
you agree with, bro. I need a fucking dot tracker.
Like, okay, what define dot tracker? Because like, can you see your dots on the enemy?
Only on nameplates, and nameplates are okay. I can't look at fucking Dimensius's nameplates, man. That's just like not a thing.
Okay, do you see it on the uniframe?
Probably.
Then it's fine. What do you need? Like, I don't use any dot tracker. Like,
well, the point is this. You know, this is WoW 2, right? We need to decide. Imagine you're a developer and you're doing WoW 2. You need to decide what's built into the game and what you need to see and what you can't see. And it's like, well, like for instance, I think a feature that really needs to happen is I think you need to be able to filter and add and remove debuffs and buffs, right? Like I think you should be able to pick what debuffs you see on the nameplate and which ones you don't. It should, you know what I mean? Because some of them are rotational, some of them are 1% min max, and if you're fired up, you really need to see your stacks of splinter. But for 99% of mages, it's clutter, right? And I think you should have the ability to say, I care about this. Some people just want to see all the debuffs, so there's 7 debuffs on the target. Like, holy shit, I'm owning, even though they don't do anything, right? Like, this is a feature that needs to be built into the game. When it comes to dot tracking, like, okay, well, how does it work? Like, does it need to be in the HUD? Because I feel like if it's, I think our point is that unless you make it help you redot in a way that it probably shouldn't, then it's probably not that useful on your main HUD, right? Or maybe you just say, hey, you should be able to move your unit frame dots to put them in the middle of your screen so that anybody you're targeting, you can see what dot, you know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm hoping for, is that I can just
I'm not sitting here
look at my
preaching.
unit frame that often. I think is probably part of the problem here.
Correct. Yeah. But all I'm saying is this, right? This is WoW 2, right? We need to get into this mindset of, okay, well, how should WoW 2 be? We can't sit here and say, I need Omni CD. I need this. I need that.
Yeah.
Give me Plater. Like there's no Plater in WoW 2. There's no Omni CD in WoW 2. Like we're looking at a brand new game and we're saying, okay, how should this be designed? How should it be able to display dots, right? We can't just keep saying, oh, we need these add-on features over. We need to be like, because it's going to be 100% true that Blizzard is going to come out with this UI. It's going to be missing stuff. You're not going to be able to do what you need to do. And we need to submit feedback and say, okay, this is, we need to be able to filter debuffs. We need to be able to, whatever. And yeah.
So some of the things that I did notice is they said that they were going to have dot tracking on the cooldown manager. That was not true. This is not on there. I suspect I would be shocked if it doesn't come in the future. What did you guys think about no buff and debuff tracking for party frames in like whitelist, blacklist? Should that be, I guess, a part of the game? Is kind of an interesting question too, because I mean, being able to track like whitelist and blacklist on frames, like unit frames, friendly unit frames, I think has been historically how people are playing.
Of optimization that goes in this game, players just optimize the fun out of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm of the firm opinion that less information is better.
So
because it just becomes more fun.
So like, do you think it would be better or worse to not be able to see a banishment dot on a player?
What do you mean?
The Salvador dot, like the Salvador dot that healers have to heal through. Do you think it would be better?
That is it.
No,
Is
no,
that
like
what
for the game. Like you're saying, you optimize the fun
You
of the
need
game.
to see that because it's a healing thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a mechanic in the game. You should see that.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
but I think right now you can't you can't track all the buffs and debuffs, right?
They need to make that.
Wait, your personal
I think.
one? Wait, hold on. Are you talking about your personal one?
No, he's talking about on the party frames.
On,
like if you're
on
trying
everybody
to,
else.
If you're a healer, you can't see who has banishment.
It's of course it's on raid frames. What are you talking about?
Is it on all raid frames? You can track all debuffs?
Yeah, the base default raid frames work perfectly fine.
Okay. I thought,
and if they don't, it should, right? That's my point.
I thought they were saying that. I thought that they said in some interview like a few months ago that they were changing how buff and debuff tracking was working on friendly unit frames.
I mean, to me, I think a lot of people are getting lost in the
though.
sauce with these sorts of details.
Maybe, no, you might be right. Like you're looking like
but to me, like if that is, even if they did, right? Even if Ian Blizzard himself came out and said, we don't want you to see other people's debuffs in the raid, like I would say, okay, well, no, this is bad. You need to fix this. You know, but I think like, okay, here's an example of people getting lost in the sauce, right? So we're talking about chat add-ons and communicating, right? There's an add-on that every guild uses. It's called RC Loot Council. And basically it just, whenever you loot a boss, it pops up, it shows everybody who wants it. The officers can decide, right? And it's tradition to like use this add-on as you're going in between bosses to sort out the loot. It saves a lot of time. It's nice, right? And oh no, Blizzard broke this. This is terrible. We won't have RC loot. Okay, yeah, we need to fix this, right? Like this should be part of the game. Like I'm not saying that every single change that Blizzard is doing is right. Like, okay, this is an add-on that clearly is broken that I think should be either part of the game or should have its functionality restored because it doesn't affect combat. Like, you know, but there are people that are like, see, they can't do this because it broke RC Loot Council. It's like, no, you can't get lost in the minutia here of like, this is how it is in build one day one of the alpha, or this is what they randomly said on some post, right? And I get it, right? Sometimes they do stuff and then it sits for the whole alpha and then the game comes out and the rogue hero talents still fucking suck and you're like, see, I told you. But at the same time, okay, well then when the game comes out, then we need to decide that. Like, I think a big thing here that I started to like wrap up my comment about why people should be optimistic about these add-on changes. It would be so much worse if Blizzard pussyfooted around and came out with you know what I mean? Like, oh, you can kind of have weak auras and you can kind of have plater. And then it just came right back to where it is now. Or there's this really weird gray line where like people are basically cheating and add-ons can do these things. I think Blizzard's idea of nuke it down, WoW 2, nothing works, and then okay, now let's piece it back together. Which add-ons do we need to have? Which things do we need to fix? And then adding back in is going to feel way better than any other way. And I think that I wouldn't have done this. I would have dipped my toes in the shallow end of the pool and slowly stepped in because I know how mad people are going to get. But I think in the long run, this is the fastest way to get to a really good place where everybody is happy.
Yeah,
not everybody, because that's never the case.
Telos, I think what you were talking about is they didn't want people to see buffs and cooldown tracking, not debuffs. Because you always need to be able to see debuffs in your friends. To Growl's point on RC Council, the funny thing is, I would be surprised if that was a happy casualty because they would prefer the same way of add-ons. People discuss loot, like communicating amongst people, rather than you doing it through an add-on.
That's funny. Even you write an argument for why fuck RC Loot Council.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like
theoretically, in the exact same way that add-ons in raid encounters kind of subvert communication amongst a group of friends, RC Loot Council kind of does it just with a different purpose, with a different.
That's a good point.
And so, like, I would be surprised.
People in the comments are mad, but you have a point.
Like, sorry, just the last thing here, and just in general, like you mentioned. Blizzard just has the final say on what they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow, and what they're going to build and what they're not going to build. Yeah. Right? Like, this is a brand new age of WoW. We can advocate for things to come back. Like, of course, I want boss timeline or boss bars for like DBM, not timelines. But there is a world where they don't add that, and I'm going to be forced to swap over to a timeline. Nobody likes change. So, of course, people are going to advocate for the things that they have so that they don't need to change. But ultimately, it's Blizzard's decision on whether or not you're going to be forced to change or not.
I've seen a lot of, I would say, people who are long-standing World of Warcraft players who are gameplay focused, starting to really, complain about all these changes that they've been seeing over the course of the alpha. Because, like, why the fuck do they care? They've already set up their UI in a way that they like it. They've already, gotten over the hump of figuring out how the hell weak auras work. And to them, they're like, well, why the hell would I care about anybody else except for myself? I've already figured out how to get weak auras to work. I've already downloaded the Northern Sky pack and figured out how to update this from version 86 to 87. Like, why would I even care about the differences there? But and for them, I honestly I understand why they could be annoyed, or more often than not, I think the word I would use is maybe concerned about a lot of these changes that Blizzard has stating, because they are, like Growl has mentioned, very large changes about like ways that the game is going to be played. I think that we have kind of come to the same conclusion that the game has been too fast paced, at least for a little while now. And something that I hope that happens with these add-on changes is Blizzard also slows down the pace of the game to kind of match the expectations of what players are going to have access to in terms of information. Because whenever you have perfect information, it's like the encounters are designed with the expectation that you have perfect information. It's like whenever you look at Legion dungeons or BFA dungeons, they don't have as many caster mobs in them. And the reason that they don't have as many caster mobs in them is because people weren't really using kick trackers back then. So Blizzard didn't design mobs with 1 or 2 casters in every single pack. Now, Blizzard is designing War Within dungeons with the expectation that everybody has a kick tracker. And so that means that there's 1 to 2 caster mobs in every single pack. Now, I think that kind of gameplay sucks. But at the same time, there are ways to overcome that, right? There is a way to beat out those trash packs in the War Within dungeon, and it involves you having perfect information in regards to kick and CC, and using that in a way that, you know, you're overlapping your CC perfectly. I think that way of playing the game sucks, but I think that at the exact same time, you can slow it down a little bit, and we're not going back to classic. I don't think that these changes that they're making to add-ons are going to send us back to 2004. But if they do slow down the pace of the game just a little bit and, you know, taper it back, maybe back to like BFA, I think the game can still be fun, and the pace of the game is still fast enough to where the gameplay feels rewarding. And I actually think that the gameplay of your character and your classes, which is something that players are worried is going to get negatively impacted, I actually expect that to largely be the same. And I think that I understand the rightful criticism, and I understand every World of Warcraft player I've ever met is very cynical and a pessimist and loves to doom. At the same time, I think that I'm fairly positive and hopeful on the outlook of the game, just because of some of the changes that they're pushing for this expansion.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to add-ons and stuff, yeah, I mean, you are rooted in what you have and you like what you have. I was watching another content creator, and he basically made a little bit of a toxic. Well, he made a little bit of a toxic point that was like, okay, add-ons are not that fucking hard. It's not that hard to download Curse Forge. It's not that hard to learn how to use the options menu and change what you want, or download someone else's settings. Like, you're just not hard. Like, if you literally get stuck there, then you haven't put in very much effort. At the same time, like, I kind of thought, I was like thinking about it, that he said that, and then I'm like, well, number one, it's a video game. Like, why some people go into a video game and they start putting in effort right away, but that's not the average person. Is like day one of the video game, they're like, okay, here's my to-do list, here's all the things I need to learn, here's how I set up my UI. Like, we only think that's so natural because we're all WoW players, but that's not really how people play. Also, add-ons are fucking hard. I remember, I'm not dumb with computers. Like, I was going for a computer science degree before I dropped out and I started playing poker. I'm very familiar with computers. Like, I've written programs and shit and designed websites. Like, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm just like not stupid. Bro, the first time I installed Voodoo, because some guy told me that Voodoo was a good healing add-on, I was fucking stuck. Like, I almost gave up trying to figure out that add-on because of how convoluted and stupid it was. Okay, add-ons are not that easy. We only think they are because we've done them for so long and we're used to them. But for people that come back to the game or like aren't familiar with stuff and just want to like jump in and play, like, okay, maybe down the road they'll get hooked, but it's so hard to get hooked in WoW with how many hoops you have to jump through and like things you have to learn.
Yeah, I see the argument that is like these add-ons are optional. I really don't think they are. My main counterpoint is like, I started the game in 2015, Warlords of Draenor. I joined this like normal and heroic AOTC level guild, and the prerequisite to join was that I downloaded weak auras and had DBM. And it's like, you know, they're optional, but they really aren't. And it's like, and I think that is a problem whenever your game has modifications that are not native to the base game. What were we gonna say, Swishy?
I was going to say, like, I started in Wrath of the Lich King. I remember one of the first things that I did was download Bartender and got my family to also install Bartender. And my dad was very resistant to it because he played MapleStory. And MapleStory works great out of the box. And so he eventually quit. But, like, you mentioned, like, so long ago, I don't think it has anything to do with slowing down the game on the add-on side. I think it's more just about like bringing back the optimization levels. Like, I think that's where we're going. I think the game is just way too fucking optimized. People have access to way too much information that honestly makes the game super not fun.
Perfection of information is in my opinion not healthy for the game. Like having perfect information is not very good.
All of us, I think, agree that when the learning aspect of any game is some of the most fun, when the meta hasn't been developed yet, like when Plunderstorm first came out, like the Fire World meta took over quite quickly, but like you got to try these new things. Ooh, is this ability good? Like, ooh, this is Arcane Orb. It's kind of cool. Like, I got this sick thing, Rhyme Arrow. Like, I think that's the way with every game, but like I won't lie, we're part of the problem too with the knowledge of information and information sharing. Like, it's just the way games go now.
Somebody was like, well, so you're going to prefer your raid leader saying defensive whenever you need to be pressing a defensive as opposed to an add-on saying it? I was like, yes, motherfucker, yes. I would much prefer a raid leader telling me to press my defensive as opposed to an add-on telling me. There's like skill involved in that, right? Or there's knowledge of actually being able to see the timer and know that this mechanic is coming and actually saying that the raid leader actually had to say, oh yeah, press a defensive here. I think that there's gameplay that's involved in that has been lost by the over optimization of weak auras, especially the last couple of expansions, because it feels like it's been crazy. What's this tweet, Squishy?
Oh, like we we're happy. We have been like talking about how we're happy that add-ons are kind of going for the health of the game, but they're like, I do need to mention that like some of these add-ons, people have been working on them for years, and I think it's really, really important to still not acknowledge that Blizzard is what is killing the livelihood of some people who have developed these add-ons almost throughout the entire of WoW's lifespan. And the result of this is these are going to basically be dead. You know, some remnants of them might remain, especially in the customization space, but it is still like really, really important to mention just how important these add-ons have been for so many people over the last few years, or the last 10, 20, 15 years. And like, to all the add-on authors out there, like, I think a lot of people thank you for doing this.
I heard the LVI people. I heard the LVI people were considering no longer maintaining LVI after reading the handbook as well. Like I think that very few of the add-on developers are super thrilled about these changes.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound not sympathetic, but I say this because I have a lot of respect for these. I have a lot of respect for these people, bro. In the level of like intelligence and the what is involved in doing the things that these guys do is a very, very high level, and these people will 100% succeed in whatever they decide to do next in their lives, and chances are it's going to be way more fruitful than doing an add-on for WoW. Like, I hate to say it, but like, these are people that could probably like create possibly like multi-million-dollar software companies with like the level of customer service and the level of being tapped into the community and willingness to change and updating it. And like, they're probably using their abilities for pennies right now. So while it's like bummer to have your baby die like this or whatever, because you like WoW, in 5 years, are these guys going to be out on the streets, or are they going to be like, bro, remember when we used to spend all day doing that WoW add-on and we were broke, and like now look at where we are? Like, I'm pretty sure that's everybody. Like, I don't know. I think that sort of space, the level of dedication and devotion and intelligence that it takes to do that, they would succeed beyond their wildest dreams in any other area of software or development.
I do think I'm sympathetic to the cause, though, that...
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, like, there's definitely a merit to saying, okay, well, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I like seeing people play the game and enjoy it with my product. But again, like, that they'll be able to find that somewhere else in life.
Maybe they'll get hired by Blizzard. You never know.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all, actually.
They might need to hire some new people.
I mean, based off of how weird the one-button script is for a lot of these classes, they probably wouldn't do bad hiring the Hikili guy to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Like, especially with the simplified rotations coming up, the one-button rotation might actually get better.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Do we want to talk about the dev notes for the classes, or do we want to talk about the developer insight combat for everyone posts that they released?
Man, are we done with add-ons? I expected to yap for like 3 hours per subject.
I think that add-ons
I was trying to move on, and I'm like, hold on.
I think add-ons are involved in this post. Like I think that they kind of work hand in hand.
I agree.
No, they
I
definitely do, and I don't think people are considering that when
Yeah.
they are talking about the combat and class design here.
The first thing I want to mention about this, if you scroll back up, draft. Everybody just know that this is a draft. It's not live. No, they released a draft. I thought it was funny. Anyways.
So basically Blizzard released a post talking about how complex combat is and what they want for the current state of the game. So the TLDR, and we're going to look at some of the tuning notes in a second. Maybe in 30 minutes or something like that after we're done talking about this. But the TLDR is that a lot of specializations have had a decent, I don't want to say a decent, but like some of their abilities pruned, and it kind of depends on the specs themselves. They've had complex interactions removed. They've had some talents removed. A lot of buttons, like I would say 1 to 2 buttons per specialization has been just kind of taken out. And now they're trying to make a more flat approach towards specialization design to try to allow players to keep the gameplay that they know and love, but also removing some of the depth that is there. Now, I think that depth in terms of specializations creates replayability, which there is going to be a kind of a fine balance that Blizzard kind of needs to strike here, where the specializations still need to feel like they have depth, but at the same time, a lot of players love the buzzword bloat for the last couple of months, talking about how much in a lot of instances there might be a little bit too much depth, and they use the term bloat to describe what was happening with a bunch of specializations. So Blizzard has gone through and removed abilities such as blood talents, roll the bones, needed to have like an add-on to calculate it. They've simplified how that works. They've basically just changed a bunch of specializations in regards to buttons they press, how they work, removed defensives from most specializations as well. Anything that I missed in terms of trying to consolidate this article? They're trying to make the game more approachable. I mean, that's kind of the TLDR.
So, yes, they are trying to make the game more approachable. But what I want to say when it comes to classes and being approachable is that a lot of what helps you play your class is these add-ons and stuff that they're removing. And that's why this goes hand in hand. And I think a lot of people say, oh, this class is brain dead. This class is so easy. For example, I've been learning BM Hunter. And BM Hunter, basically, the Dark Ranger build or whatever, you basically have one button that's very important. The whole class is literally just keeping your buffs up, making sure that you use that button as many times and you optimize your uses, right? Well, when my weak aura glows to remind me that my button is coming off cooldown and I need to hold the global to have it, and when my cooldown tracker is pulsing with a timer that shows me exactly when I'm going to receive my procs during the cooldown, and I have a bar reminder about all my buffs and it reminds me to keep them up, and it's like doing, it's like doing all this stuff to help me with my rotation. It's like, yes, it seems easy, but rotations are going to get harder as well without these weak auras and these things helping you, right? And so what people just have to consider that this WoW 2 is coming out, right? And we don't know exactly what a rotation is going to look like in WoW 2. We know WoW 1, but we can't necessarily compare what it's like to play a class when you have all these tools and the tools are being taken away. I mean, for example, there's a weak aura by one of the mage guys, the theory crafter guy, Porum,
yeah.
And it's called Barrage Helper, and the whole thing is like Barrage is your big button, that's your spender, and you have to know when it's good to press it. And it's a 19 conditional weak aura that literally reads all of your relevant buffs, everything that you have, and is like this giant thing that literally will just come up in the middle of your screen that says Barrage now with an icon of the reason why you should barrage. And it'll like tell you, okay, you have an orb barrage. Okay, you have this proc barrage. And it's like, well, Arcane would be a lot harder if you didn't like have like the way that you get information and filter information is going to be a lot different. And they're also nuking classes a little bit in this way, right? Like they're also realizing that, okay, well, players might have a lot less tools, especially to start with how they play their class. And so they have to be careful with having these ridiculously complicated classes when you might not have the tools yet to play them.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of specs like that. I know, like, they addressed most of them. You know, like Blood Talons, Feral Druid Snapshotting, Unholy DK Wounds, Roll the Bones Outlaw. Like
Ferals are
a
mad
lot
about
of
this,
the
by the
high
way.
hitting stuff is now gone. And I think it's needed, especially in a world where weak auras are no longer there to help you play your class anymore. It needs to be a lot simpler on what you need to press and when.
Well, so what I think is, and this is something that we talked about with the one button rotation, is that I think the problem is the difference between playing correctly and playing like okay. For example, with Arcane Mage, if you mess up the sequence of buttons that you press your cooldowns in, you're literally an amoeba. Like you're doing fractions of the damage that you should be doing, and your tank is asking you what happened because you switched around two globals and you like accidentally canceled the surge and you didn't notice it. Like you're a literal amoeba. When I'm playing Hunter and I miss a global or a cooldown, like sometimes I'll just completely botch my cooldown. And is my damage like not great? Yeah, but it's just so much more forgiving and like you're not your performance doesn't hinge so dramatically off of some buttons. And to me, that's what they need to do. I think they might be going a little overboard with reduction of complexity, especially opt-in complexity. Um, and I think that there's nothing wrong with having some very difficult things or complicated things as long as you have an option to play without it that's comparable. And I think they went a little bit too far in terms of like, well, they just removed it. Like they didn't even give you the option to. Well, if they would have, I don't know, are we talking about classes too? I guess. I mean, is this the class discussion? I guess I'll just do it.
This
anyway,
is the holistic discussion. I think that the
shaman has an ability called Cloudburst Totem. The way it works is put a totem down, you cast heals. As you heal, it builds up in the totem, and then at the end of it, it explodes. And it's a very tough healing spell to use because you need to be thinking ahead of time, right? You need to be like, okay, I'm going to need healing in 15 seconds. I'm going to drop my Cloudburst. And for newer players, they really struggle with this spell, right? You need a weak aura. You need to keep track of it. You need to know what the encounter is doing. A lot of people are very, very intimidated by Cloudburst. It can be a problematic spell. Luckily, it's literally on a choice node with another button that you just press every time it comes up, and then it just spews healing and you don't think about it at all. And in my opinion, this is very wonderfully designed in that there's a better, tougher option and a easier, less option. They don't need to remove Cloudburst. Like they can just, as long as there's an option to play in a way that's less complicated, and then that way they can kind of almost mess around a little bit. Like, okay, what does Cloudburst look like when you don't have a weak aura and you don't have like all this shit that helps you with it?
Now, there was a question that I had whenever I was reading this article was like, I wonder how much of this is actually related to the talent tree revamp too. Because something that I realized is like, dude, if I'm not doing like hours and hours and hours and hours of research, I actually have no idea how good or bad talents are. Whenever I read them and I read their tooltip and I read the abilities that's associated with them, I actually, without looking at a guide, have no way of contextualizing how good or bad an ability is. Because and there's so many modifiers for each and every single ability that I found it very challenging to even be able to tell how good or bad something is in regards to what talents to take, what talents to avoid, where are the landmine talents. Are there talents that are just completely not worth taking? There's a talent that's in the Boomkin tree that if you talented that node, it is better to not press that global at all as opposed to pressing that global because the GCD is just not worth the damage that you get out of it. And like those kind of things to me, I think it's really hard to know because you have 31 points that you can put into things in your talent tree. And they wrote about subtle but hard to discover talent interactions here. At the same time, I think that like, with there being so many talents too, there is a lot of complexity that like it's just hard to know if you don't read a guide or learn from somebody who has more experience or has done 1,000 sims or plays the game for 8 hours a day. No,
you're not wrong.
It's kind of weird. Like, and so them pruning abilities, it makes sense. But also, I don't know if it actually solves the problem that I was facing. Like, dude, with my Brewmaster Monk, so I finished my Zero to Hero series, and somebody asked me a question about, like, what do you think about Brewmaster as a specialization? And I go, I don't know anything about Brewmaster. I spent my entire time, my 90 hours of gameplay, trying to figure out how to play the game. I don't actually know anything about Brewmaster talents other than the talent tree. I took a talent tree that was told to me that was supposed to be good, and learned like how to play the game through the lens of that talent tree that I was given. But I don't know anything about any of the other talents that I didn't take or why they're bad. And that's
Yep.
like
That's the big difference between like when I play my Devastation Evoker and when I play other things. Like I know what the swaps are in my Devastation Evoker. I know what to take. I know what to avoid. Like, oh, I want rescue for this fight. Like I want more AOE. I want a little cleave. Like, but with the second I go to like a Demon Hunter, I'm net decking that talent tree, and that's it. No swaps. Like, so I hear you on that.
That's why I was, we got some flack for saying that we like the mop talent trees better. But the reason I like that is because it's more obvious what the trade-offs are, and you can sort of decide as a player what you want. Like for example, just as like a mage thing, there's a mage choice node. One of the nodes is the first time you use each spell during your cooldowns, it does a burst of damage for some amount, or when you press your cooldowns, you get a flat damage bonus. Which one's better? How the hell would you know?
You literally.
How would you know which one's better? Now, if from a game design perspective, you could say, well, the one that does the first hit in every cooldown should be more effective because it's more difficult to use. Therefore, this is the tough but better one. The other one is the easier but less one. But like that might not be how it works, right? Like it could just be totally random. You would have no idea unless you literally simmed it or you asked somebody, right? Whereas okay, let's say you had two other talents, right? One that says it buffs your arcane missiles and one that says it buffs your arcane orb. Well, okay, orb is AoE, missiles a single target. At least you can use your brain to look at these two choices and say like, okay, well, they do two different things. The problem is there's so many nodes where it's like, your barrage does 12% more damage at the end of every hour on Tuesday. And it's just like, how am I even supposed to know like how much this is contributing or how useful this is? And I think that there's just, when I use the word bloat, I just think that there's too many nodes that are very hard to calculate the trade-offs. Are like when Squishy says, oh, I know all the things about dev, what Squishy means is I know the specific trade-offs that are important, right? He could not calculate individual nodes in these things, but he knows like, okay, when I want AoE, these are the talents that don't help on AoE, these are the optional ones that do help on AoE, and it's like, well, may as well just have the mop talent trees, right? Of like, okay, well, here's the AoE talent, here's the single target talent.
So whenever we start simming specializations, like at least for balance, this is kind of how we do it. At the very beginning of an expansion, you look at the nodes that are your highest hitting nodes in a specific profile type. We'll take single target for this. Where, okay, what are like the mandatory nodes? They're going to be required nodes that you have to take, those or whatever. Then you start simming it out and seeing what are like your nodes that are like 20, 30, 40, 50% damage increases. Okay, those are going to be the required nodes. Those are going to probably be the backbone of how you actually design your specialization. And that's going to be like automatic for each and every single like build that you ever play, whether it be AoE or single target. Then you start to get down to like, okay, what are the really good nodes? What are these 10% damage nodes? You're like, okay, these are probably going to be played in every single situation. Maybe some of them have like large trade-offs or have problems. Then you start to fall into, and there are going to be like 20 of these, somewhere between 1% and 5% damage nodes. And you're like, in what situation would these nodes be good or better than others? And then you have to start like kind of factoring it in, and then you throw that in the robot. The robot will probably spit out like 2 or 3 builds that are decent. And you're like, in what situations would this be better than this? And you're like, okay, so this talent is probably harder to play in most situations, and it's a side grade to this build. So this build's probably going to be the best for everything. And then you're like, okay, this is good. This is where we landed.
But yeah, the big issue is the robot, right? Like,
yes.
Well, and technically anybody can look at talents and say, okay, which one would be better in these scenarios?
Exactly.
But you don't even know, right? Like, you literally need the robot.
You need the robot to tell you exactly, which is I think a fundamental problem. And so it was something that they talked about trying to make the game easier, more approachable, and trying to increase approachability. A lot of what they did was actually reducing buttons, though, for specializations, which I think is largely pretty good. What did you end up thinking about the Fire Mage changes? Because I saw that Fire Mage ended up losing Phoenix Flames, and that was something that Phoenix Flames and Scorch, for that matter, and that was something that I thought was maybe a little bit heavy-handed, but hard to really
overall say. Across all. So I spent more time looking at healers than DPS specs, only because like I was sort of like I'm still sort of like where you are with Brew, where it's like, what I don't even know about these trade-offs. I just follow the robot kind of.
Yeah.
Overall, I would say, in my opinion, they were too heavy-handed. Like, there were a lot of things in terms of class changes that I liked, but there's also a lot of them that were kind of like head scratchers that sort of, like I said, like, in my opinion, if you want to play a complicated class and
Yes.
because while I'm sitting here, right, and I'm saying that I want WoW to be more accessible, I want more people to get into WoW. Also, there's a whole lot of people that are like, dude, every other game is so boring to me because the combat in WoW is so interesting and fun and complicated. Like the class design and stuff in WoW is so good, in my opinion. Obviously, like you can say, oh, this era was better or this class sucks, but overall, if you compare it to any other game in the world, WoW, just considering how many specs there are, is just laughably how complicated and like interesting WoW is. And I want that to stay. I want that to stay in a way if you want it, right? Like, I think if you want your class to be complicated, maybe, like, for instance, BM Hunter, right? Like, I don't know if there's ever a world where BM Hunter is going to be the hardest class to play, or like Holy Priest, right? There are some classes that are there as archetypes to be simple classes, but there also should be many classes that are complicated classes. Like, in my opinion, there's no world where they need to simplify every single warlock spec or mage spec, right? Like, that's part of the archetype of that class, is like, this mage spec is really, really fucking hard, but it can be really good if you use it well. Like, that's also very good and important to WoW, and I think they were too heavy-handed across the board.
I do just want to also say that it's pretty frequent that good players in World of Warcraft do like 60% of your potential damage. And, I bet like Race World First players only do like 90% of their potential damage. Nobody is doing the like GCD perfect, like rotation, decision making, everything. It's just not something that happens in WoW. And something that they did say in this post, that they have to deliver on this. And I think that this is a huge thing for them to deliver on. But I did agree with this. They said, we understand that mastering World of Warcraft is a crucial part of its appeal. However, becoming an expert WoW player will look a little different after Midnight's approachability changes. Rotations will be learned more quickly. Less time will be spent on customizing add-ons, and you'll experience new types of challenges during your encounters. It's satisfying and fun at all skill levels to learn to utilize your abilities effectively to optimize your performance. And it's important for us to maintain that depth. Specs will still be designed to give players opportunities to maximize their play, and players with determination to master the game will continue to distinguish themselves. Now, I think that creating that replayability, creating that depth is a huge thing that WoW needs to continue to have. I don't think it's losing that whenever I read the changes that they're making so far in regards to add-ons, in regards to combat design, in regards to spec design. But I have seen some people complaining about individual situations where things are getting deleted that they're not super thrilled about, like things like Scorch and Phoenix Flames and things like Blood Talons, which then is why it's important to give the feedback, not like, oh, I want you to go back, but like, oh, I think you actually removed a piece of the game that is fun, that creates fun levels of depth, not intentionally obtuse levels of depth.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because over the course of War Within, at least with a few specs that I've paid attention to and I've had my ear to the ground to, they've done a good job of simplifying them to the point of they're actually totally fine now, or close to fine. So two of them that have a notoriously bad rap for being complicated, but anyone who plays the spec will tell you it's actually pretty easy. One of them is Disc Priest. Disc Priest, while it can be hard to survive because it's a priest, it is so much easier than it was. It has gotten so simplified. They've lost so many buttons. It's a little unintuitive with the way that it plays, but that's the class, right? Like, the idea is, healer that does damage to heal, like, that's the gimmick, right? It's a little bit not intuitive to understand. And they've made it easier and easier. And so if they come at Disc Priest and they end up making it even more simple, like, at what point are you just mashing Smite and that's the only button you're pressing and you're doing healing? Another one is Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage, at the beginning of the patch, there's this joke about, 14 barrage conditionals. Notably, it was the Spellslinger playstyle, the hero talent tree. This current iteration of Arcane Mage is actually quite simple, to the point where I just turned off the Barrage Helper weak aura thing because it was just clutter, because it was so, you only have to track like 3 buffs, I think, to know when you have to barrage or not. And it's like, okay, that's perfect. Like, to me, that's good. Like, there's still some min-max to it. Fired Up still does more damage than I'll ever dream to do. But it's good. And to see them remove even more things from Arcane Mage, I'm kind of like, But at the same time, I think this is akin to the add-on nuke, where I think what they're doing is they're nuking a lot of the classes because they don't know what it's going to be when you remove all these weak auras, when you know, and yeah, I think there's a chance that we go into midnight and a lot of the classes are like, this feels a little lacking. This is a little simple. Like this feels like it's missing something, right? But then they're like, okay, then they might change some more talents, right? Like they've been more receptive with talent changes and interesting tier sets than they've ever been. So my expectation is they're going to neuter the classes. They're not sure how it's going to be. They want things to be really accessible. And then they're going to start building up the complexity again. But now they're doing it with the ground up, right? Like now they're like, okay, now all the classes are piss easy.
Everybody got a rework.
And I don't even... And
literally every spec got a rework in some capacity.
And I'm being a little bit exaggerating when I say every class is piss easy, right? There's still tons of ways to optimize. But a lot of the buttons, a lot of the things, the cooldowns are being thinned down. And then, here's Arcane Mage. How do we make this more interesting? Yeah. Instead of a lot of the depth and the complication of the classes is like, you know, these talents that are left over from 4 expansions ago or whatever. Like, you know, I question some of these things that they're removing, you know, like Arcane. So for Arcane Mage, an example, you want to barrage when you want to barrage, but you have a buff called Arcane Tempo, where if you don't barrage for a certain amount of time, you lose 10% haste. And so the idea is every once in a while, you may have to barrage when you don't want to, because you don't want to lose your buff. You don't want to lose your haste. Well, now Arcane Tempo is just a passive haste buff. And it's like, well, like this is a little bit too simple. Like now you basically are just
Mythic Plus though. Like it's really
right. It can't. Yeah, you're sitting here. You're thinking, dude, my fucking Arcane Mage is pulling mobs for his tempo or whatever.
There's that mob before I was ready.
Yeah, right. So there are all these trade-offs and all these considerations, but like, okay, well, let's remove tempo, and then now how do we add in something else that maybe will be less annoying or more interesting, or it could even be cooler than tempo? And I think people are just being a little bit short-sighted. Now, granted, Blizzard does some weird stuff sometimes, and so it's totally justifiable to not have faith in them. But I do think people are being a little bit short-sighted and thinking that Blizzard can't beef these classes back up again and make them interesting. Dude, I think this idea
Blizzard is killing the game narrative. I fucking hate it.
Yeah, it's like this narrative that Blizzard wants all of the mouth-breathing, controller-playing console players to mash A and do mythic raids. Like, this is not the... I mean, I might eat my own words, right? When I'm playing with my controller at age 40 in my bed and mashing A in Drogo's guild. But realistically, I expect all of the classes to get more and more complicated and for that to creep up again, right?
Is that the title of this video? Blizzard is killing the game? Question mark.
Question mark, exclamation.
Yeah. That's the title of this video, right?
Yeah, of course. We just got to make more and more clickbait titles as we go.
Yeah. Something else that they changed, feedback, healing changes in Midnight. I think I'm really interested in your thoughts on these. So basically, this is a post that I think I have read 4 different times now for 4 different expansions. Hello, Squishy, welcome back. We're talking about healing changes in Midnight now. We just finished talking about the combat post. Did you actually, before we talk about healing changes, do you have any final thoughts on the combat post?
No, I mean I agree with it.
Okay, perfect.
All right, thanks for your contribution, Squishy.
Yeah, no worries. I never.
No, he mentioned he had like an important work thing come up. That's why.
Yeah,
I'm not making fun of him for not caring.
The long story short is, I think like there's probably some critique that some specs might have gotten hit a little hard.
Yeah, sure.
But overall, I think this is good for the health of the game. I think is my summary of that.
Yeah, and basically what we said is they're going to build these classes back up too, right? Like, it's not like they're just want to turn Arcane Mage into you mash A the whole time and that's it, and that's how it's going to be for the whole expansion.
Yeah.
Will there be... I think what the biggest thing that people need to realize, I think, is if you go into this WoW 2 and you play one spec and you want that one spec to be exactly the way you want it and you don't want it to change, but you want it to get new toys and new cool things, but you want it to be exactly what you like about the old spec, like, unfortunately, you might be a little disappointed. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like, you might be disappointed. But WoW 2 announced. That is a good title, actually. But I think that WoW has a very big breadth of different specs and a lot of different diversity.
Yeah.
And you may find that your spec isn't quite what you wished it was before, but I bet there's another spec that you'll enjoy just as much.
Okay, so let's talk about the healer stuff. So they said in this blue post, in the War Within, healing generally is fast-paced and healing spells can rapidly shift you from a raid of severely damaged state to nearly full health in a matter of seconds. It is stressful to react to rapidly changing health bars, and it's very intimidating for newer healers to grasp what they should be doing at any moment. Healers have a large variety of high-powered cooldowns, and they can rotate through to handle basically every major damage event they encounter. At midnight, we have made some changes with the goal of slowing down the rate at which you can heal up a party or raid from a severely injured state, and we want healing to require less pre-planning of knowing which cooldowns to use at what precise moment. We want there to be less ramp-up time of complicated ability sequences to get effective throughput for your healing spells, and this is what we're going to be changing for our healers, where talent choice nodes, short cooldowns, consistency, and time to react are all going to be changing. Now, I will say, in that blue post, I've been fooled a couple times. Fool me 3 times, shame on me 3 times in a row. Do we think, Growl, that there is actual change that's going to happen now with what we are seeing from the class design side of things, where Resto Shaman has now been turned into a 4-button spec?
In WoW 2, I think there's a chance. I mean, I've been fooled multiple times. This is in the category of things where Blizzard has talked a big game, but we need to see it, right? And I think that everything that I've seen so far has leaned towards yes. I think that we haven't talked about defensive pruning, but they've removed a lot of defensive abilities. They're changing cooldowns. I think they're undoing a lot of the damage that they did with the Dragonflight talent trees. So one thing that a lot of classes experienced when Dragonflight talent trees came out is they were able to combine different things in ways that they could never before and have these crazy combinations and like, oh, you get this cooldown and that cooldown and that cooldown. And for DPS, you could argue that although it's maybe harder, it's just more fun, right? Like the more crazy things that you're doing, the better it is. For healers and tanks, it dramatically impacts the way that you play the game, though. Like we noticed with tanks, well, when every tank can take 7 different major defensives and they can take this combo of talents that keeps their passive mitigation up permanently, in order to challenge you as a tank, well, they just have to one-shot you if you don't have your shield block up, and they have to make tank busters where you literally have to have a major defensive up for every single one. Otherwise, like, it's so easy to live.
Yeah.
And that created a gameplay loop that was really, really unfun. A lot of tanks were complaining of like these crazy tank busters that would literally just one-shot them if they don't have a shield wall up. And it's sort of the same with healing stuff too. Like there's crazy damage events where it's like 75% of everybody's health, like multiple times in a period of 10 seconds, but you're like also blasting everybody's health bars up. And while that can be fun to be very powerful, when you create challenging content, it creates this very global, perfect demand. And while as a DPS, okay, I mess up a global, I do less damage. The consequences of messing up a global as a tank or a healer is way more severe in terms of, like when you mess up a global as a healer and your teammate dies, it is so much less fun, right? Like it can't be that same razor thin edge when we're talking about healing and tanking as it is with DPS and min-maxing. And they needed to slow it down. Like they need to make it so if your healer messes up one button press, your whole party doesn't die. Maybe in a plus 27 key or MDI or whatever, but I'm not talking about that, right? Like I'm talking about like genuinely you run into these healers in like a 13 or a 14. Oh, holy cat! He wants to say something.
He decided the mic was just he's got to fight the mic for a second. Like what was that?
All right. That was amazing. Anyway, my point was just that they need to do this. They need to slow this down. The consequence of this will be healing will be more about thinking about the situation and deciding about the right spell rather than exact global perfect sequencing.
Okay, why is every healer a ramp healer now? Like why does every healer have like a ramp phase where Prez Evoker, Holy Priest, Resto Druid, Disc Priest, all of them just have ramps that they have to do now?
Well, because like traditionally, right, a ramp for people who don't familiarize themselves with healing is like preparation before big healing, right? Like you press all these buttons, then the damage comes in, and then you blast a bunch of healing. Well, because damage is so fast and crazy and there's so many combos now, every healer just has to have that, right? Every healer has, this talent buffs this, and then you put this up, and then in your next 2 of these, you get buffed. And there's so many different if this, then this situations that in order to do these heal checks, you need to do this fucking Mortal Kombat fatality sequence every time the boss comes out of like F-Low, Life Bloom, Rejuve, Regrowth, the non-regrowth guy. It spreads this. Okay, do this. Okay, Nature Swiftness, Convoke. And it's just like, I messed up one button and then dead. And it's just like,
yeah.
it's just not fun to play as or play with. You know, as a DPS, you don't want this either, right? You don't want your healer to be like, you know, doing the sweaty meme guy thing just to live, and then as soon as he presses one button wrong, because let's be honest, healers are stupid, right? I'm a healer, I know that. And you don't want to rely on this guy to do a Liu Kang fatality every time an AoE damage comes out just for your character to be alive.
So I want to mention something. I don't think this has been posted, but there was a question about in the interview about getting more people to play non-DPS roles, which obviously includes
Ooh,
tanks.
yep.
And so, Gal, have you seen this answer from Ian?
I did not.
Okay, so let me try to that. Does that work? No, it's zoomed in. Hold on. There we go. All right. Look, I did it for Tettles. So basically, are there any planned or reward design goals to try to get more players playing non-DPS roles in order to facilitate pickup groups? That's a great question. It's something we spend a lot of time about. I think that specifically for Mythic Plus, the burden of information on tanks is not lost on us. It's not just about your ability to play your spec well and to push your buttons. It's about knowing the route and having memorized the skips that the community prefers and what other people are expecting to see, how you maximize your enemy forces, and so forth, and that can be very daunting. The amount of information we're giving players Mythic Plus and how we can ease that burden logistically, that's something we talk about a lot. We don't have a silver bullet that we're ready to roll out at launch at midnight, but we know that I think for tanks in particular, that's a major concern. And I think for healers, part of it, I think part of the goals of our general approachability improvements when it comes to how much information you have to manage. A lot of the time right now, there is so much thrown at you to multitask that add-ons feel necessary to manage and to service the most pressing things that you can react to, particularly if you're a healer trying to watch out for the entire group. You need to be aware of when every mechanic is coming up that might cause burst damage. You might need to pre-shield, pre-hot, all that stuff. We think that by disarming what add-ons are capable of doing and adjusting our encounter tuning to suit, I think, again, we want to keep the same overall level of difficulty, but I think that we can make the experience more approachable just in terms of a couple fewer things going on at the same time. He goes on to talk a little more, but like, what do you think about that? Basically,
I mean, I think that what they're saying. Sorry, I'll tackle this first. I actually think that what they're saying is like fairly accurate in regards to like, yeah, it does make it more approachable. It makes it a little bit easier. At the same time, I still think that there are like fundamental issues of both of those roles that make them, I would say, hard to play in Mythic Plus. But I think that more than anything, it's like, it's kind of like a support in any other game. Like nobody really wants to play support, and so you have to really you have to make it like very, very powerful, right? It has to be over prioritized in an intrinsic way, not like in terms of like you give them bonus Valor Stones or something like that. I guess Valor Stones are gone, but like you give them bonus crests. It needs to be something that's more intrinsic, I think, than that. But I do actually think that allowing the pre-existing people who already play tank and healer a bit of an easier time in regards to things like, less complicated add-ons, giving them perfect information, I think that's certainly going to help. It definitely won't hurt.
I think a lot of it comes down to, again, when I talk about that, how unforgiving things are. Like as a tank, I'm sure this is something that you can relate to now, Tuttles, of okay, you're doing a pull. Like routes aren't really that crazy to you, I bet, right? Like I bet in your tanking challenge, because you played Mythic Plus, like that routing wasn't really a problem. But at the same time, like one problem I bet was a huge thing that you mentioned was gathering, right? Like knowing how the mobs behave and how they walk down the stairs and what abilities can tag all the mobs, right? And why was that frustrating for you? Because it's so punishing if you mess it up, right? Yes. If you throw a keg and for some reason it doesn't hit that one mob, it walks over to the healer, bang, dead. And it's like, you feel like a complete idiot for like such a small, tiny mistake. And I think that's part of it, is not necessarily the knowledge gap, because I think people actually like to, let me learn the dungeons, let me see what the mobs do, all this, right? But I think the precision required and how punishing it is when you mess up as a tank or a healer is the big thing. And I think that it's possible that they're on the right track here with, saying that, there's so much stuff going on. And again, I understand that I play high keys, and there is, at some point, there has to be this level of demand, right? Of you're doing a plus 29 and you mess up as a healer, your team should die. But a lot of people who, Tuttles didn't do that high of keys as tank, and these mobs will kill his teammates instantly if he doesn't, he's not doing that crazy of content. Like I think doing keys at that level should demand that you're reasonable at playing your class and that maybe you have decent gear, but it shouldn't require that level of precision with, oh, you didn't press this defensive against this mechanic, you're dead, and now your whole team is dead because you died in 3 seconds. Like, it's just too reactive, or not reactive, but like, too punishing, too snap decision sort of thing. And I do think the alleviating the mechanics can be part of that. But like, as a DPS, like, dude, there are so many pulls as a mage or now a hunter now where I just fuck up so badly to the point where it's like, dude, if I was playing a tank or a healer, my whole party would be dead and there would be an abandoned vote on my screen. But because I'm playing DPS, well, I do tank damage as pull, and now, like, the consequences are so much less for DPS. And let's be honest, we're all World of Warcraft players. We're here to escape responsibility and consequences. We don't want to be punished. Like, people in WoW do not like to be punished.
Okay, so something we kind of tiptoed around as well are the pruning of classes. So basically, pretty much every single specialization or class in the game had some level of button removal, talent removal, defensive removal, where, Druid had Nature's Vigil and Renewal removed. Mage had, let's go look at Mage real quick. That's gonna say damage. I'm gonna have to scroll down a bunch.
Mage had so their mirror
removed.
images now no longer is DR. It's just mirror images, and greater invis is no longer DR. It's just invisibility.
The following talents have been removed: accumulative shielding, blast wave, displacement, diverted energy, frigid winds, ice flows, encounters flow, mass barrier, reabsorption, rigid ice, shifting power, slow, supernova, tempest barrier, temporal velocity, volatile destruction. This was a defensive. Tempest barrier is also a defensive, right? And there was another one that was on here, right?
What's crazy is Mage still has 3 defensives and like 4 stops in the tree. It's absolutely insane. I was talking about this with Drogo last night about mages, and he's like, it is insane how many stops and defensive Mage still has with what they just lost. Like, the fact that you had 6 defensives and 19 stops or whatever is amazing.
Egregious.
And like, shifting power, you can reduce the cooldown of it. Like, dude, people were talking about as a joke, like using mass polymorph as a stop because it stops all the mobs casts in a pack. Like, bro, this is just too much.
Okay, something that actually blew my mind whenever I was reading these notes. I mean, this is just about Frost Mage. They said our vision for Frost Mage and Midnight involves a consistent damage profile with smaller peaks relative burstier specializations of Arcane and Fire, but a higher consistent damage output. I questioned whether or not this is going to end up being true. Like, I feel like they're not going to be a specialization that does higher overall damage and but lower burst damage, mostly because that's not how they fucking designed any specialization. They designed specializations to do consistent overall, right?
I mean, even if that's the case, it depends on the delta, like, but people will prefer the burst over the consistent damage.
People always prefer the burst over the consistent damage. I mean, burst is just a better damage profile than consistent damage. But Blizzard doesn't tune like this. I was just shocked to read this, that they were saying that, because Blizzard tunes specs to be overall damage very close to one another, not favoring sustain or burst profiles, because otherwise Beast Mastery Hunter would be the best spec of the game for every single patch always, because they don't do burst damage. They have just the most flat damage profile ever. I don't
think they're as flat as like some other specs now, but
yeah, no, I kind of know what you're saying.
I know what you're saying.
I more think it has to do with they want to keep Frost, like, they don't want to change the idea of the class. And even though you might look at what they're doing and think that that's going to happen, like, I think their message here was they're going to change, like, they don't want to change the idea behind the class of basically just like, you have short cooldowns, you press them when they light up, your major cooldown isn't that big of a deal, versus, right, if you look at, Fire Mage, for example, Combustion is all of your damage, and Combustion is very important, and so is Surge, and you don't necessarily have these short cooldowns with Fire or Arcane. It's more like your cooldowns enhance your normal rotation in them, and then otherwise you're just like, pressing. I think that's more of what they were trying to say, rather than like whatever words they used.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Now, there's also kind of a tangential thing with this, because one of the problems with really, really bursty cooldown effects was a problem that we haven't had for a little bit. And words that haven't been uttered on this podcast in a very long time Augmentation Evoker.
Oh my god, the aug changes were crazy.
Yeah, so if you didn't see, Augmentation previously, it buffed 4 DPS in raid with Ebon Might, and you got to choose 2 of them, which made it a giant pain in the ass to play in raid optimally. Now, they're simplifying Ebon Might so it targets all DPS in your party and just splits the damage buff across all of them.
In
And
your
it's going to
raid,
be
you say in your, it's in your raid too,
oh, in
right?
your raid, sorry.
Yeah.
Across your entire raid, it splits the Ebon Might equally. So
my
much easier
gosh.
to play. Augmentation Evoker is no longer going to benefit from really, really bursty classes. Like, this should help them actually tune Augmentation to be reasonable. And I think people will have actually fun playing this class again because it's no longer going to be cringe.
Dude, I read this and I was like, I would consider playing this in raid now. Like, it's you're gonna have to juggle you're gonna have to juggle your prescience around based on who has offensive CDs available, which there is some gameplay that's attached to that. But beyond that, it's going to be more about making sure that your Breath of Eons is on time, making sure that your prescience is on time, making sure that you're extending your Ebon Might with Eruption, and less about, because like before you would have to preemptively apply prescience to somebody like 30 seconds prior to you pressing your Ebon Might, because you needed your old Ebon Might to fall off. That way, whenever you pressed your new Ebon Might button, it didn't refresh the old window, and so you had to let it fall off. And then you had to refresh on this new person who's about to press his offensive CDs in 10 seconds. And if he delays his offensive CDs, then you're fucked. And it was just so cringe. Like, it was the hardest spec to play optimally in raid. And I think that they have actually just made this way more reasonable to play in raid.
And easier to balance, I think, is the big thing that the majority of people more care about. There is a tuning knob that they can use now for this.
Yes,
because it's less on having, the bursty classes that will benefit that, every 30 seconds or for every Ebon Might window and all this kind of stuff. You're splitting it amongst every single DPS in the raid, meaning your delta is probably going to be a lot smaller on average.
What if you play with some garbage DPS specs though in your raid? Like, I feel like we should be class stacking more to buff our AUG more. That's very important. We can't be playing with some of those C tier DPS.
But in Mythic raid, that's going to be split amongst what, like 13 people.
Yeah.
So even if you have like 3 bad specs, your average is still going to be not that pulled down because it's across 13 people now.
Yeah.
So like, it's not that bad. I think this is great.
I think this is the change that they need to make. I will say, I don't like how Ebon Might buffs primary stat. I think that there is a problem whenever you're buffing primary stat because it requires the Aug Evoker to be good and the person that you're buffing to be good to be able to actually yield damage out of them. And that's particularly a complaint towards Mythic Plus. I wish that it would be like damage procs that was based off of damage instances from a person with an ICD on it, so specs that hit 100,000 times don't get a bigger damage gain. I wish it was more proc based as opposed to main stat, but like, I mean, this is definitely a change that makes this spec a lot more playable. Also, something that they changed was Hunter's Mark.
Well, actually, I want to mention about AUG because I think, and sorry if this is lost on some people if they don't necessarily agree, but what I think the cool part about AUG is and the role that it fills is if you want to be a DPS player, but you just kind of want to like chill and hang out with your friends and you don't necessarily want to be compared on your damage and forced to, you know what I mean? Like, everybody knows the feeling of playing DPS and you're staring at your damage and you're like, that's all you care about. As an AUG, it's sort of like, hey, like, I'm just here to chill. You guys are better than me. Like, I'll just buff you guys and kind of hang out and do utility. And that's kind of how it is sometimes in M+. And I think that it's important that AUG doesn't necessarily have very easily attributable damage. I know some people might disagree, but I think that's the purpose and the role that the class fills, is that no one cares about your damage. You're an AUG, but at the same time, like, you're not dead weight. Like, you're still helping us and like helping people have fun.
I disagree with that because I think it's just annoying. I think it's you go and look at their damage. You go and look at their dead weight on Warcraft logs as opposed to being able to see it on a damage meter.
Or alternatively, have hero talent trees that separate the two. Have a hero talent tree that converts all your buffs to proc so that it's easier to measure and it's more for a traditional DPS player who wants to see, and then have another tree that's like obscured and does stat buffs and weird stuff and like, just is that. I think that's a good option as well.
Yeah. But anyways, as I was saying, other changes. Hunter's Mark now increases the target's damage taken by 3%, was previously 5% above 80% health. I think that there are still annoyances with Hunter's Mark, particularly related towards Mythic Plus. But now this spec has like an actual raid buff, which thank God. There's no
What
more...
are they doing with raid buffs, man? Like, why? What are they doing? Why is it? Oh, DK grip is a raid buff, but can they just be universal? And like at this point, this is them admitting that they want every class to have a raid buff, right? Like the fact that Hunter's Mark had a unique reason to bring it to the raid that would buff your raid's damage, but it wasn't quite good enough, so now they need to buff it and make it
some Hunter. So just think about it, right? Like DK and Undermine was not a raid buff because nothing was grippable. So what do they do the next tier? Blizzard overcompensates as usual, makes 3. You're required to bring 2 DKs. I don't think you could do the fight without 2 DKs still. Like
it's just so reactionary and unnecessary the way that they're handling this. Like just unify the raid buffs, make it so you're incentivized to bring one of every class and you get this buff. And like what they're just trying to cook way too hard and it is just burnt in the kitchen and it smells like shit. And I'm sick of it at this point.
I mean, you're not wrong because like. No hunter was run Dimensius, and some hunter was probably like, "Oh my god, like we weren't brought buff the raid buff." So like, I wouldn't be surprised.
Windwalker was dropped on Soul Hunters too.
Okay, but like that's one boss fight. I mean, like, and monk buff was not. You still brought a monk buff.
Yeah.
I mean, they wanted to buff Windwalker too, but everyone was mad about it. They tried to buff that.
I mean, everybody hates raid buffs. I think everybody's just like, this system sucks.
Did your cat like change something on your mic or something? It like sounds a little different now. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I hope he didn't change something whenever he was.
Okay, that sounded okay. Maybe it was just something weird or like it changed.
Yeah, might have been us like sitting far. Stat squish and interrupt changes. What do we want to tackle next?
It's stat squish is whatever. We have no context for this right now.
Okay.
Like,
let's talk about
there's a stat squish.
I love the numbers squish. At first, I was reading the abilities when I got on the alpha, and I'm like, this does no damage. This does no damage. This does nothing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, the numbers squish. Like, I hate this. Oh, everything does 4.2 million. Like, it is just so dumb. Like, I'm sorry, but there is just no reason for that either. Like, come on. Like, you don't need to just increase the damage numbers over and over and over again in a game that's 20 years old and then randomly squish them every 4 expansions or whatever. Like, I hate that.
Well,
I love when the numbers are more understandable.
They're gonna keep squishing the numbers no matter what, like it or not, I think.
Do it every expansion. Just at the end of every expansion, revert it back to normal numbers. How hard is it?
They could do that. That would make sense. And beyond that, interrupt duration has been increased for PvE content only, where every single interrupt in the game now has a 2-second longer lockout duration.
This is great news for our war against bolters.
Holy shit.
Great news.
Yep. So if I remember, if my memory serves me, either the beginning of this expansion or Dragonflight, they did this weird thing where they reduced the lockouts of all the kicks, and it was 100% for PvP, but they like wrote something in there about how it was for PvE because we don't know why, and there's no reason that this ever needed to go through. And they basically didn't. I mean, they've gone a long way in terms of the way interrupts and spellcasts and stuff work in dungeons, but it's still not perfect. And there's still these bolter mobs that are miserable in like a lot of dungeons. And so, yeah, this is very, very welcome. And I think that, like, in my opinion, I think that every mob should either be, it's a bolter and it takes 2 guys to lock it down, or it's got an important cast and it takes 1 guy to lock it down. Like, I think that's how mobs should be handled in dungeons going forward. And anything that doesn't abide by that archetype, they need to look at that. Yeah. And this goes a long way, right? Like, improving these lockouts makes it so if you have 2 kicks that are on a 15-second cooldown, you can basically lock down a mob.
I personally wish they would hybridize this more. The fact that kick lockout is a variable number is very silly in my mind. And I think if there's an area where they could simplify the game, this would be it. And just like melee interrupt, 4 seconds or 5 seconds. Ranged interrupt, 6 or 7 seconds. Just like, why do we have some that are 4, some that are 5, some that are 6, and some that are 7? Like that would help them balance the game more with bolters as well, I think.
It just feels a relic of old school PvP.
I agree.
To me that, yeah.
I think that's probably somewhere I would put it.
I was maybe more interested in the fact that, like, I wish that Blizzard, instead of increasing lockout duration, I think the lockout duration is a way of doing this. I wish they would have just put a cooldown on bolt casts after you kick it. like just a 2-second additional like cooldown on bolt cast after you kick it or something like that. I think that this is totally fine, a fine approach, especially whenever you're removing perfection of information in regards to kicks. Like your kick trackers getting removed, right? They're just gone. And so I think that adding additional lockout duration is important. But I actually think that something that's even more important is Blizzard reducing the amount of casters in dungeons. I think that this is like great and all, but if you stroll up and you're doing Priory of the Sacred Flame and you have that number of bolter mobs in the dungeon, it doesn't matter that the lockout duration has been increased to 7 seconds for counterspell. Like they're still just going to bolt your head off, and now you're not going to have a kick tracker to be able to see who has their kick up and who isn't, and you're going to have this issue where people are overlapping kicks too frequently.
Okay.
And so
there's also, sorry,
there's
one thing to mention regarding this that is not mentioned here is one spec lost an interrupt.
Restoration Druid,
Kick,
yes.
right?
Skullbash did get removed off the.
For some reason, they removed a kick from one more spec, and now Healer Druids and Healer Priests don't have a kick.
It's kind of funny because, so as somebody who like streams and makes content, you have these, I almost call them like sticking point abilities, where as someone who is terminally playing the game, it doesn't really bother me, but a lot of people seem to have problems with. One of them was Cloudburst, like I mentioned earlier with Shaman. For Druid, the Druid kick and like the idea of having to shapeshift into Cat and dash in as a healer to kick was like a really big sticking point for a lot of people. And I think it's an annoying trade-off because as a Shaman, you want this control. As a Druid, you want this control, but it has this drawback for newer players. And it almost feels like once you've mastered this, now you're losing something that won't necessarily be replaced. So yeah, I don't know. Like personally, I said this when I was playing Priest at the beginning of this expansion. I fucking love not having kick. Like, I don't want to worry about kicking mobs. Like,
kick. Like they just want to.
Bro, there was a time I was doing a hard mode Tazavesh, and the first boss in Gambit, the one where you have the beam that follows you, and then you have to kick the guy that comes in or your party wipe.
Oh, yeah.
I have the beam on me, and as a healer, my natural inclination is I'm going to be very good with the beam and bring it way far out, because I'm not a DPS, right? Like, it doesn't matter if I run out early. I don't care about my globals. And so I'm putting this, like, beautiful beam that makes the room very easy to traverse, right? And then Dorky's like, growl kick. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm in the corner of the fucking room, and I'm, like, dashing now across the room, and then, boom, we die. And it's just like, the fact that I have like a melee kick on a caster healer that's known for mobility, it just feels awkward. And I don't know, dude, give Resto Druid beam. That's my answer. That'll make the Druids happy too. Give Resto Druid beam.
I don't care if they encroach on my class fantasy either. You can have it. You can have Solar Beam. Won't matter to me.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts on this beyond that, Squishy?
No, that was basically it. I just think it's weird. Like, healers didn't used to have kick at all. Now it's this weird hybrid thing. It's just like, shit.
Yeah,
it's weird.
I don't know. I think they need to reduce caster mobs. I would be down for like 50% as many caster mobs as we've had in War Within Dungeons. Like literally half as many. Nobody would be mad about.
I think they're very close to perfect, and I think there's just a few sticking point problems, like the bolters in Arakara or Priory are huge examples. The pack of 6 spinny guys that you need to stop by Swamp Face, that's another one. Like, why is it that if our team just doesn't stop something for a couple seconds, like it's just so these are packs that will be very difficult if you're not in comms and you don't have add-ons, right? But I think overall, if you look at so many mobs, like for instance, the surveyors in Floodgate are very good mobs. One person can stop them with their kick, and if you're targeted, it's not necessarily you're dead instantly, but you're taking a lot of damage and you need to do something right away if it goes off.
Even
right?
something like Farstalkers and Ecodome Aldani that cast that arcing zap, I think that ability is just bullshit. Like, I don't think that mob needs to be a caster. Like, why is that mob a caster?
Oh, really? I actually disagree. I was going to say that's a great example because so basically Farstalkers, it's a 20-something second kick bolt.
Yes.
So any DPS class can fully lock down a Farstalker with one kick. And I think that's exactly how mobs should be. If you're a person, you're like, okay, this is my mob, I'm going to lock this down. If you want to be an MDI player and pull 17 mobs and then AoE stop chain them, that's on you. But in general, it should be, okay, this is my mob, and then you lock it down. And then in rare situations, it's like, okay, for instance, the first boss in Priory, there's the fireball guy. Okay, maybe 2 people need to rotate to kick the bolt. Even the firebolt guy is a little bit much for kicks, but
I think that the issue that I have with the Farstalker is that you can construct a pull where it's like Farstalker, Ritualist, or Farstalker Pact Speaker, and you're just
all right. So the way,
why?
Yeah, but then okay, one guy's on each Farstalker, and then the other 2 are on the Ritualist.
Okay, but the issue is like in my mind, like I think that kick should be doable without being in voice. And if you want to play like us, be super sweaty, we can afford to overpull because we are coordinating stuff. But I think that as it currently stands, kicks are largely not doable out of voice. Like you have casts that go off. I don't
think so. I disagree.
I
think you can easily do a 20 eco dome with no voice. I think you have 2 people who are like, okay, this is my mob, I'll kick it. I mean, and the kicks aren't even like they blow up your party. They just do a lot of damage to one person. I mean, okay, this is what you do, right? If I was in a 20 eco dome in no voice, 2 of the DPS, it would be, okay, here's your marker, you kick it, okay? And then the melee and the tank would be, you guys share a marker, the tank kicks first. And that handles up to a bolter and 2 Farstalkers. And if you want to pull more than that, okay, it's on you.
Sure.
Like, if you want to pull 4 casters, then there's a problem. But there's no packs that have 4 casters that I remember.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's more just like I believe the mob density of like caster mobs tends to be way too high.
I think.
Like, why does every pack have a caster or 2 caster mobs in it? Just generally speaking. Like,
yeah, but like 1 caster that casts every 20 whatever seconds is fine. Like, I don't think that's that big of a deal if it's back with 1 Farstalker in it.
Yeah.
Like, you could technically, in my opinion, you could pull 4 different packs that have a Farstalker each, and that's still a fine pull. Like, everybody gets 1 Farstalker. That's not that. Like, that's actually fairly easy. Like, that's fine.
I actually think needing to interrupt is like an overused mechanic in Mythic Plus, maybe.
Yeah, see, we boiled down to the problem that you just don't even want to have interrupts in Mythic Plus at this point.
No, like I don't think it's like I don't want to have interrupts. It's more just like I think that interrupt is like maybe 2 overused. Maybe that's my problem with it. But it's also just like it's really fucking hard to play whenever you kick all the time.
I mean, I think they could just innovate with them more. Like right now, the interrupt meta is just pretty bland. It's like there's bolters and then there's like big casters, right?
Yeah.
Like what happened to the like, we in Torghast they had mobs where you needed to like kick twice or stun twice in order to get through a CC immune thing. Like if like let's say Growl's thing was there's a mob like it casts Venom Bolt Volley every 25 seconds, but it's protected and you need to triple kick it. 2 protections, 1 kick. So your team is just ganging up on this one mob with its kicks. That's the only thing you need to kick in the pack, but you just need to triple kick it.
That's the only caster.
I see what you're saying is they could be a little more innovative, but I don't think that's that wild. And I think that
I don't think it is either.
I think comments will agree. Growl W here on this one. I'll take the win on this one.
I mean, Tettle's L is a necessity at this point. So
I mean, the comments have already agreed before the podcast even started.
No, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I just think it's just like in the game. I wouldn't hate if there were just fewer mobs that cast in general, and they tried to experiment with maybe different styles of mob, because it feels like mob that casts bolt is just way too overdone.
Yes, okay, I'll agree with that, but
yeah, no notes.
All right, any final thoughts on any of the changes?
Are we talking dungeon stuff now or Monday or Tuesday?
Oh, the Mythic Plus rotation. We can save that for Monday.
We can talk about. Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, that'll be in the pile of like little short subjects that we'll talk about.
We can save that for Monday.
Okay.
All right.
Right now.
GG's everybody. Great bonus up. See you guys.
GG's.
See you guys on
See you
Tuesday,
fam.